At the conclusion of my talk this week with Nitush Pawa of Slate Magazine, we talked about some differences between the Democratic majorities in Lansing and in Albany, New York. And we recorded the interview just before New York's primary election, in which progressive Democratic Congressman Jamal Bowman lost his primary race. And here's Politico's take on that primary race, and I'm quoting here. Representative Jamal Bowman was trounced in a suburban New York race that became a referendum on progressives' attitudes towards Israel and the most expensive House primary in U.S. history. Moderate Democrat George Latimer bested Bowman on Tuesday by 17 points with 88% of the vote in, making Bowman the first member of the squad to lose an election since the far-left group formed in 2018, unquote. Now, I will give the Politico reporters credit for pointing out how that was the most expensive House primary race in our nation's history, as the pro-Israeli lobbying group known as AIPAC flooded the Latimer campaign with $14 million. Now, I'm not sure I really have much to say about that particular race since I don't live in New York. I don't have much knowledge of the districts or the inner political machinery that's happening there in New York whatsoever. I will say perhaps two things are true. One, that Congressman Bowman wasn't the best politician. Pulling the fire alarm in Congress probably didn't help either. And he's just not that smooth as, let's say, an AOC is when it comes to political talent. I think another thing is true, though, that you can say that AIPAC gave Latimer millions because of Bowman's anti-right-wing Israeli government stance, and that helped Latimer in that race as well. Two things can be true. But there's also something else I want to tackle here, and it's something I've asked before. In that Politico article, the reporters described George Latimer as moderate, and they described the squad faction of the Democratic Party as the far-left group. So my question is, what is a moderate? I've asked this question throughout my years of working in conservative talk radio as a liberal voice, and I never, ever really got any concrete answers or any concrete responses, ever. I remember in my last radio job in Saginaw, the longtime conservative host there, he and I would have discussions about JFK. The conservative host, who was an adult when JFK died, held Kennedy in high regard despite being a Democrat because the host was Republican. And he would constantly tell me that if JFK were alive today, he'd be a Republican. Now, I'm certain many of you have heard such claims, and it's something I've heard throughout my near quarter century in talk radio. But when you present them with some facts, concrete policy facts, they remain stuck, or, maybe I should say, maybe this is a better way of saying it, they refuse to let go of that idea, of that myth that JFK would be a Republican today. I mean, hell, his younger brother, Ted Kennedy, became known as the liberal lion of the Senate. Yet I'm to believe that JFK would have buddied up with Dick Cheney, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, dear leader Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and the entire MAGA crowd. Really? I'm supposed to really believe that? The guy who personally took on U.S. Steel when it turned its back on its agreement with union workers would be MAGA today? Really? The guy who authorized collective bargaining rights for federal union workers, the guy who proposed Medicare, which Ronald Reagan declared to be socialism, and the guy who proposed civil rights would be a Republican today? He'd be all MAGA? Are you serious? In fact, with what I just told you, he'd be considered an AOC leftist today by many in the MAGA crowd. Which leads me again back to my question, what is a moderate? Sub-question, what does a moderate do to help improve the lives of many in this country? I've asked those questions many times. Again, I don't get any kind of real concrete answers. Bowman was anti-war, was pro-ceasefire, pro-union, pro-worker, pro-public education, and pro-women's health and economic rights? When did those positions become far left, as Politico would call it? George Latimer is considered the moderate choice by Politico, but what makes him moderate? Does backing the extreme right-wing Israeli government make someone a moderate? Does saying that you refuse to back President Biden's plans to tax the rich make someone a moderate? Does signaling that you aren't on board for an excess profit tax on corporations make someone a moderate? Does refusing to say you'd back Medicare for all, does that make one a moderate when the current system isn't affordable and isn't sustainable for average Americans? Is that what makes you a moderate? No one can explain to me what exactly makes a person moderate. For example, many called West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin a moderate, even though he refused to extend the expanded child tax credit, which helped cut child poverty in half in 2021 and 22 and lifted over 177,000 children here in Michigan out of poverty. Yet, I'm told that he was a moderate. How does increasing human and moral suffering make someone a moderate? How does refusing to back a federal minimum wage hike of $15 make someone a moderate? I mean, we've seen the numbers. With inflation, the minimum wage should be around $20 or so, even more. So $15, that seems kind of weak in a way. But yet I'm told that is the moderate position. How does criticizing those calling for a ceasefire in Gaza make one a moderate? I mean, is that what moderation is? Increasing and prolonging human suffering? Look, moderation, good at times, like not eating pizza and donuts every day. That's good. You should do that stuff in moderation. Or drinking a 6-pack of beer every day, not good. Maybe you should cut back a bit. Drinking in moderation is always better. Or maybe, kicking a field goal rather than going for it on every fourth down sometimes is a better idea, Dan Campbell. So yes, moderation, I guess, does have its points, does have its merits. But when has moderation on a political level ever really helped? I think back to the Obamacare debate when the so-called late moderate Democratic Senator Joe Lieberman refused to back Obamacare if it kept a public option, a public insurance option. So that public insurance option got scrapped out of the final bill, and millions of lives were hurt and made worse because of it. But that was the so-called moderate position. I think back to when Rick Snyder was considered a moderate Republican when he ran for Michigan governor back in 2012. But yet his moderation led to passing the right to work for less bills that destroyed unions here in the state for a while, gutting living wages for working families, the Flint water crisis, making it harder for citizen-led initiatives to reach the ballot, gutting paid sick leave, giving the crooked school choice crowd whatever it wanted, allowing adoption agencies, I'll say that again, allowing adoption agencies to discriminate against same-sex couples, preventing state environmental standards from exceeding federal standards, and he also worked to prolong the Line 5 oil pipeline at the bottom of the Straits of Mackinac. I mean, that's just to name a few of the so-called policy achievements of the moderate Rick Snyder. But I'm not sure exactly how that is moderation. I mean, you just heard me tell you of Rick Snyder's so-called accomplishments, and they were all designed to increase human suffering. And when it comes to moderation on abortion rights, how does one moderate between giving women health and economic freedoms or choosing that the state should have control over their bodily autonomy? I'm not sure where the moderate choice is there. You're either for freedom or you're not. Since Michigan Democrats took over the state trifecta, Abortion rights are codified in the state constitution. Abortion zombie laws are gone. Right to work for less is gone, while the prevailing wage is back, and it's back to help working families. The retirement tax is gone. Clean energy goals and clean energy jobs are back at the forefront again. LGBTQ plus residents gained civil rights protections. Hateful gay conversion therapy is banned. Child marriage is banned. And free meals are offered in Michigan public schools. See, those things are helping improve the lives and improve the economic and environmental futures for the people of Michigan. Now, look, more needs to be done, of course, but I'm still wondering why political reporters and pundits out there, why they believe fighting for fossil fuels and gay conversion therapy is considered the moderate position, while providing meals for kids or paid family leave and sick leave or living wages are considered far left. The thing is, they're considered popular with Michiganders, which is why they are passing and which is why Governor Whitmer is enjoying good approval numbers. Martin Luther King once talked about the white moderate, and he said the white moderate is the one who is devoted to order more than they are to justice. Progressive policies help improve lives by being bold and using common sense. Show me where moderation does the same.